Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of House Bill 2070. It's been a long time coming, Mr. Speaker, to reach this day where the House could be on the verge of putting up what I hope will be broad, bipartisan numbers to save lives on the roadways in Pennsylvania. Mr. Speaker, back when you were chairman of the Transportation Committee, I first introduced legislation to ban the handheld cell phones and texting while driving, and we had about a dozen co-sponsors and got a little bit of attention, but the bill went nowhere. A couple of years ago, when we reintroduced the bill, between 30 and 40% of this chamber, Democrats and Republicans, came together to co-sponsor this measure, but still the bill went nowhere. Today we stand on the precipice of broad bipartisan support for a bill that will no doubt save lives for the people of Pennsylvania. Mr. Speaker, I will simply say to Oprah Winfrey, who dedicated a show about this just last week, Oprah, we hear you. Pennsylvania is about to become a no-phone zone on our roadways, and the result of which will save lives. Now, we know, Mr. Speaker, that this is the first but an important step on the road to getting this bill passed. It still needs to go over and pass in the Senate, and I'm hopeful that it will. But there are four key components in this legislation that I believe should be included in any final bill. Number one, and this House has done it in the underlying bill, is we need to have a strict ban for teenage drivers. We know that we need to make our teens safer and our roads safer, and we need that language to stay put. We know that we need a tough law on texting, and the representative from York spoke ably for many years in trying to bring this about. We know, and we saw this yesterday with the broad bipartisan support we had, that we need to have a ban on the handheld cell phones. The science shows it, the study shows it, that the combination of those handhelds and the texting together will save lives on Pennsylvania roadways. And we know, Mr. Speaker, that this needs to be a primary offense, We know that if it is a primary offense, we will save lives on our roadways. It is not about just simply adding fines to motorists. It is about stopping accidents from occurring in the first place. That is what this legislation does. Mr. Speaker, on a personal note, throughout this process, throughout this roughly 5-year process, I have received more than 1,000 emails, phone calls, letters from people all across Pennsylvania supporting our efforts to get this done. And, Mr. Speaker, I can't help but think today on the eve of this vote of the horror stories that have been shared by so many Pennsylvanians who have been the victims of accidents or who have seen a loved one get hurt or who have barely missed an accident themselves. I think about J.C. Good, who came and sat in the speaker's chairs, who had graduated from Lancaster, who had graduated from Muhlenberg, and was driving home the day after graduation with her family in her car when they were struck by a motorist who swerved as a result of one of those drivers being on one of those cell phones. J.C.'s family in that car died that day, and J.C. was left in a coma. Today, we hopefully will pass this legislation for the J.C. Goods and the so many Pennsylvanians who have been unfortunate victims of people talking on their handheld cell phones and texting while driving. This is a major progressive step forward. This will save lives on our roadways. And, Mr. Speaker, I thank you, I thank the leader, I thank the chairman of the Transportation Committee and members on both sides of the aisle for staying committed to this issue, for driving it through, and for ensuring its passage and ensuring safety on Pennsylvania's roadways going forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.